When it comes to the Pokemon games, everyone has their own set of goals that they're looking to achieve. That being said, there are a few like completing the Pokédex or overcoming an evil organization that I'm sure the vast majority of us would consider the cornerstones of each game. The most common goal, however, would be becoming the Pokémon Champion of that region. And while the large majority of these games are linear in that sense, the sheer number of Pokemon available creates an infinite number of possibilities such that every trainer's adventure is entirely unique to them. There's no better feeling than watching a team you constructed dismantle your opponents as your Pokemon work in tandem to counter your opponent's Pokemon while also covering for each other's weaknesses. But what if you didn't want to do that? What if instead, the weight of becoming the World Champion rested solely on one Pokemon's shoulders? Just how many trainer battles would you have to win to achieve this goal? And when I say trainer battles, I mean only trainer battles. Now before we get into the run itself, let's go over some ground rules first. Obviously, we will only be using our starter Pokemon to do battle. We'll also only battle against other trainers throughout our entire adventure, meaning there will be no battles against wild Pokemon. This includes max raids in the wild area as well. I will be noting down every trainer I battle, and should I lose to one, the next attempt will count as a new trainer battle. But I think that's enough waffle for now. Let's fly on over to Postwick, where our adventure begins. Now just like in any other Pokemon game, we start in the cozy little town of Postwick. Here we join our friend Hop as we run down to the station. We meet our end goal here in the form of Leon, and after racing him back to Hop's house, we're given a choice between 3 starter Pokemon. Now this here is probably the most important choice we'll have to make in the entire run, as whoever we pick becomes our entire team. That being said, you could definitely make this work with any one of them, as they all excel in certain areas. The Grookey line, despite being the slowest of the bunch, has decent physical bulk and a solid attack stat. Similarly, the Scorbunny line has decent attack while also being much faster than the Grookey line. It does however suffer in the defensive department just like the Sobble line, which was the one I ended up going with. To me, Inteleon's Glass Cannon build made the most sense, especially when paired with his high speed stat, which allowed for far more sweeping potential. His typing also meant that he had the least number of counters while also having the capacity to learn a decent number of coverage moves to help counter his weaknesses. Finally, I think he's a good matchup into some of the late game fights like Raihan and Leon. Either way, after picking our starter, we're immediately thrown into our first trainer battle against Hop. Now unlike many of the rivals in the past games, Hop begins this game with 2 Pokemon. This may seem like an unfair fight at first, but after clapping his Wooloo, we're able to reach level 6 on Sobble, which gives us access to Water Gun. Hop also takes the starter that is weak to ours, meaning our new move is able to clear out his Scorbunny, earning us our first victory. From here we entered the Slumbering Weald, where I encountered some wild Pokemon for the first time. Because we're only battling trainers in this run, we're going to be doing a lot of running away. And I mean a lot of running away.
Why are you running?
We also meet a mysterious Pokemon before waltzing through Route 1 to meet up with Sonia. Route 1 has no trainer battles at all, and the items present, while helpful, aren't groundbreaking by any means. After chatting with Sonia, I made my way over to the berry shop where I purchased a few orange berries. Despite their humble effect, they're actually fairly useful at this point in the game, as they offer a decent amount of healing without having to waste a turn. They're especially good for these earlier fights, as 10 HP makes up a considerable portion of Sobble's total health pool. Things pick up in Route 2, as it contains the first set of trainers we'll have to fight. Now because we're at the very start of the game, our opponents aren't overwhelmingly strong. That being said, our Sobble is barely a level above their Pokemon, and some of them have multiple Pokemon that we'll have to get through. The orange berries proved crucial in these earlier fights, allowing me to whittle down their Pokemon over time. The path to follow leads us down to Professor Magnolia's house, where we face off against Hop once again. This time he's added a Rookie D to his team, meaning we'll have to deal with 3 Pokemon. By this point though, Sobble had amassed quite a large level gap on his first 2 Pokemon, while also making quick work of Scorbunny as usual. From here we board a train as we set our sights on Motorstoke, the location where we'll officially start our gym challenge. Before that though, let's talk about the wild area, which is where we are dropped off to begin. Now whether you love it or hate it, the wild area was one of the biggest selling points when these games first released. And while it didn't really live up to that hype in my opinion, I still spent countless hours roaming these areas, catching Pokemon and participating in max raids with my friends. This time however, the wild area is practically useless. There's only one trainer present in the wild area, and I'm not allowing myself to participate in max raids. raids. The only helpful aspect of the wild area this time around are the countless items scattered around the fields. Unfortunately, the most important ones aren't accessible at this point in the game, meaning we'll have to deal with the coming roadblocks with what we've got so far, which in all honesty, isn't much. Anyway, we take out a few Team Yell members before teaming up with Hop in our first double battle. As we'll come to see, the only instances where I can participate in double battles are when I have a teammate to match up with me. The rest we'll have to skip as we progress through the game, meaning we'll be losing out on a significant amount of experience. Regardless, none of these Team Yell battles were particularly challenging. You managed to learn Water Pulse, which is a significant power increase over Water Gun, as well as having a chance to confuse the opponent as well. From here, we attend the Gym Challenge opening ceremony, before wiping the floor with Hop once again. His team hasn't changed since the last time we fought him, but concerningly, his Pokemon have started to out-level our Sobble. In an attempt to scrounge up some extra experience, I remembered that you could stop off at the Battle Cafe once a day and get an extra battle in. These battles aren't hard in the slightest, but hey, every bit of experience counts when we're relying solely on one Pokemon. Another thing I should mention is upon arriving in Motorstoke, we're given the Mystic Water item from Leon. This item is by far one of the best things we can run at this point in the game, as it boosts the power of all of our water type moves by 20%, and trust me when I say, I abused the fuck out of this combo going into Route 3. What's that? You got a Vulpix? Light work. Wow, a Pancham. Yeah, get that shit out of my face. Aww, that's cute. A Bidoof. Wait, it has Absorb. Ah, fuck. Well, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Schoolboy Marvin here has given me the most trouble so far. Not only does this guy have two Pokemon with him, but they're both grass types, meaning they resist my buffed Water Pulse while also dealing super effective damage on my Sobble. Bidoof was particularly annoying, as he'd just spam Absorb, which prolonged the fight to the point where I had to start whipping out potions. Thankfully though, their damage output wasn't significant enough to KO Sobble, and the many trainers to follow quickly crumbled beneath Sobble's legendary water pressure. Now if you thought these beatdowns couldn't get any more dominant, it was also around this point where Sobble evolved into Drizzle, just in time for Galar Mine. As you can imagine, taking a freshly evolved water type into the mines where the majority of the Pokemon are either rock or ground types is like taking a flamethrower into a forest and expecting nothing to happen. These trainers stood no chance at all, and this includes Bede, who's just waiting here for us apparently. This guy's team looks like something 12-year-old me would cook up and think is sick. Well, except it'd be a whole bunch of fire types instead. His typing of choice, however, is Psychic, which is good news for me, as it meant Drizzle could clear out his whole team with Water Pulse. The trainers in Route 4 didn't fare much better. While a few of them had some electric types, they couldn't handle Drizzle's drip. By this point, I had fought 29 trainers, and while some of them were tougher than usual, the large majority of them hadn't posed any challenge whatsoever. Until now. This here is Turffield Stadium, which also marks the first gym challenge in the game. If you haven't noticed by now, these guys specialize in grass type Pokemon, which isn't good news for us. Not only do they absolutely shred through Drizzle's non-existent defense, but we have no coverage moves to deal with them at all. The only super effective move that could be obtainable at this point in the game requires us to be level 30. Now because we're only allowed to fight trainers, there's just no plausible way for me to hit this level this early on, meaning we'll have to take this gym on with what we've got. To make things a bit easier, I taught Drizzle Swift, which was given to us by Hop back in Wedgeverse. Now Swift isn't some superstar move or anything, but it is a special attack and is far stronger than Pound ever was. And with it, we're able to almost do half HP to an Oddish that's 4 levels below us. It's not looking too good. Either way, these gym trainers, while annoying, didn't pose a major threat to Drizzle, who as mentioned was a good few levels above them by this point. Milo, on the other hand, yeah, this guy was going to be a problem. Getting past his Gossifleur was easy enough, but the fact that his Dynamax Eldegoss could one-hit my Drizzle with max Overgrowth even after I had lowered its attack and special attack meant that I had to cook up a new strategy. It's not like I could go in power level Drizzle with wild Pokemon battles, so instead I looked to abuse items. My second attempt looked far better. I got rid of his Gossifleur with ease and once again started setting up tier 4 looks on his Eldegoss. I then Dynamaxed a turn later and tanked his second hit with a max guard before healing up on the next turn. This time, I had actually survived Eldegoss's Dynamax form, and I was actually feeling really good. Ah, fuck off. Alright, looks like we need a plan C. This plan involves using an item that I practically never used when playing these games casually, those being the battle items. Thankfully, the city of Motorstoke stocks them inside its Pokemarts, and as long as we have the money required, we can buy as many as we want. I stocked up on a few X special defenses and made my way back to Turffield Stadium. Now on my third attempt at this battle, I started by using an X special defense to significantly boost my tankiness. The strategy from here remained the same. Deal with Gossifleur first before setting up a few tearful looks on Eldegoss to reduce his damage. I would then Dynamax Drizzle and use Max Guard to waste the turn before healing back up in its final Dynamax turn. I was able to tank 2 hits of Max Overgrowth with the help of this X special defense, and after a few more Swifts, we finally beat Milo. We're given the TM Magical Leaf for our troubles, which is completely useless, before making our way into Route 5. It's here where we first stumble across a double battle that we'll have to skip. Unfortunately, we're not able to even attempt to fight them. I guess it would be pretty embarrassing to lose a 2v1, so I don't blame them for chickening out. The rest of the trainers here don't pose too much of a problem either. Some of them have a grass type here and there, but they're nothing compared to what we just overcame. On our way to Hullberry, we face off against Hop for the 4th time. This guy is still a complete joke, and Water Pulse essentially clears his whole team before they can do anything to Drizzle. After another few trainers, we find ourselves in Hullberry where our second gym challenge awaits. This second gym centers around water types, and while this poses no real threat to Drizzle, it also means that he doesn't pose much of a threat to them. Before throwing myself to the sharks though, I decided to stop in at the markets and pick up the Lax Incense. This reduces the accuracy of any moves targeting its holder by 10%, and it's not like I'm going to be using Water Pulse against water types, so Mystic Water is pretty useless here. With that done, let's have a quick chat with Nessa before taking on her gym challenge. This gym challenge has us fighting her trainers while we solve this extremely challenging puzzle. Okay, let's be real. This maze is a joke, as are many of the trainers here. As I said before, because this is the water gym, none of these Pokemon are a threat to me, and we're able to smash through most of them by spamming Swift. Our fight against Nessa was a similar story. I started by using an X special attack to increase the damage of my moves. Swift was then able to take out both Nessa's Goldeen and Arrokuda without much trouble before she sent out her Dreadnought. Now because of Dreadnought's water rock typing, water type moves actually do a decent amount of damage to him, so of course I spammed Swift. Either way, I was able to beat Nessa, earning us our second gym badge. From here we make our way into Galar Mine number 2, which just so happens to be the second and last cave of the entire game. God, do I miss Victory Road. As you can imagine, another mine means more rock type Pokemon to blitz through. We face off against Bede for the second time here, and to give credit where credit's due, he's certainly a bit tougher this time around. He's actually the first trainer to have 4 Pokemon, and while they aren't a major threat to Drizzle on their own, their damage does slowly build up over time, especially when every single one of them also has a 10% chance of confusing Drizzle with their attacks. We meet with Kabu at the end of the mines before making our way back to Motorstoke through the outskirts. On our run back, we cross a bridge that contains a few feathers that can be used to increase the stats of our Pokemon. For now, I just use the Genius Feather to increase Drizzle's special attack, as we'll be buying the much more effective vitamins later on to maximize these stats. Back in Motorstoke, we face off against Marnie, whose team, much like Bede's, isn't too bad. There are a few annoyances like her Croagunt's Dry Skin ability, which negates my water moves, as well as her Morpeko, which knows Thunder Shock. Thankfully, her AI was cooked and she never actually used Thunder Shock against me, meaning I was able to dust her off pretty easily. The only thing left to do in Motorstoke was to take on Kabu's gym challenge. This one's a bit different from the rest. See, you don't actually face any trainers, rather you have to fight wild Pokemon to progress. And while I said I wouldn't fight any wild Pokemon in this run, there's no way to regress, so we'll just have to make an exception here. Because this is the fire type gym, the Mystic Water once again took the item slot as I absolutely railed Kabu's first 2 Pokemon. His Centiskorch on the other hand was extremely scary, and you're probably thinking, well, how can that be the case? You have a clear type advantage. Well, I wasn't actually able to one-hit Ninetales, which allowed it to set up a Will-O-Wisp on me. Now this isn't a move I could afford to tank the whole fight, so I cured it as Kabu sent out Centiskorch. This allowed him to get a free Max Flutterby on my Drizzle, which took him down to dangerously low health. Thinking I could tank 2 of these hits, I healed my Drizzle back up, allowing him to get off another Max Flutterby. Ah shit. Well, that was pointless. This is where I realized that I couldn't possibly tank 2 of these hits, meaning my only hope was to one-hit Centiskorch with Max Geyser. The only problem was Centiskorch had already hit me with 2 Max Flutterby attacks, and these attacks lower my special attack. I was honestly questioning if I could even deal with his Center Scorch in one hit at this point. I mean, I was down 2 special attack levels and I couldn't afford to tank any more Flutterby hits, so I just clenched my butthole and prayed to the Pokemon gods. And thankfully it worked out in the end, allowing me to claim my 3rd gym badge. We travelled through the riverbanks of the Weald area before arriving in Hammerlock. Just like Motorstoke, the gym challenge here is a bit too tough for us at the moment, so instead we set our sights on Stow-on Side. But before we can get there, we need to fight our way through Route 6. This route here was the dark horse of the entire run. The trainers here had some pretty annoying Pokemon, but the biggest problem was the weather. See, Route 6 is always covered in harsh sunlight, which is great for fire types, but is also extremely detrimental for my Drizzle. This made my most powerful move essentially obsolete, meaning I had to rely on my weaker moves to get by. Well then, and as you can see, I wasn't getting by. This backpacker was the first trainer that wasn't a gym leader to beat me, and I honestly was stumped after losing to her for the first time. Her throw being fighting type was extremely annoying, as there were no super effective moves I could obtain to deal with it easily. Not only that, but this throw had access to moves like Storm Throw, which always seemed to crit me. It also had Revenge, which just absolutely destroyed me considering I always outsped. How am I supposed to deal with a throw that can tank multiple hits from me while powering up his own revenge attacks? I'll tell you how. Abusing herbs. Yes, I used fucking heals on a regular trainer. I just didn't see a way past her otherwise. Honestly, the beatdown I got here didn't bode well for the next gym challenge, as it relied entirely on fighting types as well. Before that though, we'll have to wipe the floor with Hop once again. Frankly speaking, I actually like Hop a lot, because he's one of the few rivals that changes up his team drastically throughout the game. This particular battle here is the first instance where he does so, and honestly, it's probably the toughest one yet. His Cramorant was especially annoying. His typing makes him fairly resistant to my moves, and his use of Dive usually means he would be able to avoid my second attack, while also picking up a Pikachu that he launched at Drizzle, paralyzing him in the process. After he's taken care of though, the rest of Hop's team falls apart. I guess it's time to take on the 4th gym challenge now. As I said before, this is the fighting type gym, and you may have noticed that I have no coverage moves for it at all. Drizzle and Inteleon can only learn a handful of flying type moves, none of which are accessible this early on into the game. So again, we'll just have to make do with what we've got. God, I really need to stop saying that. Honestly, I just needed my Drizzle to evolve into Inteleon by this point. Even weaker Pokemon like Stuffle were becoming a handful, and their attacks could chunk over half of Drizzle's HP. Thankfully, Drizzle was able to avoid Bind during my second battle against this trainer, and after beating the next one, he finally evolved into Inteleon. Not only that, but he learnt the single most important move in the entire run, Snipe Shot. My newly evolved Inteleon quickly dealt with the final gym trainer, leaving only the leader, Bea. Bea's team consists of Pokemon with extremely high attack stats, which meant I came into this fight thinking if I didn't one-hit her whole team, I'd most likely be clapped up myself. Thankfully, Bea starts off with her weakest Pokemon, Hitmontop. This guy has the lowest attack stat out of our entire team, which gives me ample time to use some X special attacks and X special defenses, which... or she can just get a fucking crit. Okay, let's try that again, shall we? So again, I use some battle items like X defenses and X special attacks, and... fuck me, what are these crits? At this point, I just had to bulldoze my way through. I couldn't afford to keep using a whole set of battle items each attempt, as they're not exactly cheap and I don't have infinite sources of money either. Thankfully though, I was able to snipe my way through her entire team. This included her Gigantamaxed Machamp, who didn't do nearly as much damage as I thought he would. But then again, I'd popped 2 X defenses beforehand. With the 4th gym badge collected, it was time to travel through Glimwood Tangle and onto Ballonlea. We did Body Bead once more on the way here, but by this point he's kind of irrelevant. Ballonlea is a very small town, meaning there's practically nothing to do here. Regardless, we're here to take on the 5th gym challenge, and boy is this one a complete joke. The Ballonlea gym focuses on fairy type Pokemon, which aren't a threat to Inteleon. But the main reason this gym is so easy is because of its gimmick. See, during each battle, Opal will ask a question and give you the choice of 2 answers. Should you answer these questions correctly, you'll be awarded with specific boosts to your stats. This makes most of the fights a complete cakewalk, including Opal herself. You know who wasn't a cakewalk though?
You gotta be kidding me!
That's right, this guy has once again switched up his team completely, and this one poses far more problems for my Inteleon than all of his past teams combined. Now I say his team, but in reality the biggest roadblock was his Trevenant. Sure, I out-leveled it by a mile, but its Horn Leech attack was still extremely dangerous. Not only that, but this thing has Confuse Ray in its kit, meaning I would have to waste a turn curing it, which only lets him get another Horn Leech off. For my second attempt, I took things a bit slower. I set up a few X defenses to tank his Horn Leech attacks, only to die to a fucking crit once again. It was only on my third attempt that I finally managed to beat his Trevenant, and after he fell, so did the rest of Hop's team. At this point, I had wasted so much money on buying battle items just for them to be wasted that I needed to switch to the amulet coin in order to earn back some of that money from the trainers. Thankfully, none of the remaining trainers on Route 7 and Route 8 proved to be that challenging, so I was able to farm up quite a nice chunk of change that'll be very helpful later on. For now, let's make our way up into Circhester. Now, Circhester is a fairly important town for this challenge, and that's mainly because of the TMs we can grab here. See, originally my plan was to grab Ice Beam to deal with Raihan, the 8th and final gym leader, but then I realized the only way to get Ice Beam in this game is to buy it with Watts. And because I can't do any max raids or battles in the wild area, there's just no way for me to earn Watts. It had taken me this long into the run to realize that I wouldn't be able to get Ice Beam. Heck, I couldn't even get Surf, which was going to be my other endgame move. So instead, we'll just have to make use of Icicle Spear or Icy Wind, which are both found in Circhester. Ironically enough, these two moves are the only Ice-type TMs Inteleon can learn, which brings up the question, which one of them is better? They both have mediocre damage and effects, but I opted to go with Icy Wind purely because it's a special attack, while Icicle Spear is a physical attack. Regardless, after picking up these TMs, it's time to take on the gym challenge of Circhester. Because we're playing Pokémon Sword, this gym focuses on rock-type Pokémon, and you know what that means. After obliterating Geordie and his colossal failure of a team, we square off against Hop once again. He's once again switched up his team to mirror some of his earlier ones, and in all honesty, this iteration of his team is far easier to deal with than that bloody Trevenant. The only Pokemon that could be considered a threat is far too weak to deal any significant damage. After dealing with Hop, we make our way through Route 9, which features hailing weather at all times. The trainers here are also quite tough. Fisher Harriet has a Lantern that not only knows Discharge but Confuse Ray as well. Dancer Zoe has a Blossom that I can't even one-hit with Icy Wind despite my massive level difference. And even this random Team Yell Grunt was able to take out my Inteleon with a single counter. Just goes to show that you can't underestimate anyone. After getting my revenge on these grunts, the Doctor upgrades our Rotom Bike, giving it the ability to ride across the water. Now this upgrade allows us to access a whole range of new items like rare candies and PP ups. The most important item, however, is located back in the wild area and requires us to ride across the water to this little island. It's on this island where we can obtain the TM Air Slash, which is the best flying type move Inteleon can learn given its PP amount, accuracy, and power. This here completes our moveset for the rest of the game, offering a good coverage of moves that can deal with our biggest counters. It's also just a stronger neutral option than Icy Wind when we have to deal with Pokemon that are resistant to Snipe Shot. This power spike is felt almost immediately, as back in Route 9 we have to face off against a few black belt trainers. Throw, who had carried me earlier on in the run, was no longer a problem, nor were the countless other fighting type Pokemon I had to face. After making our way back through the frozen beaches of Route 9, we arrived to find Spikemuth closed off to the public. Because we're the main character though, we're given the opportunity to sneak in through the back. The catch? We have to defeat Marnie first. Thankfully half her team gets absolutely smoked by our newly learnt Air Slash move, and the other half is actually kind of annoying, so we have to pray that we could one-shot them with Snipe Shot, which we could. Defeating Marnie gives us access to Spikemuth, and it's here where we stumble into the biggest roadblock of this entire challenge. See, to participate in Spikemuth's gym challenge, we have to enter with 2 healthy Pokemon. If you haven't noticed somehow, I've only been using 1 Pokemon this entire time, meaning it's impossible for me to complete Spikemuth's gym. So instead, I just caught the first Pokemon I saw and used it to enter the gym challenge. Now just to be clear, Liepard didn't use any damaging moves during these double battles, and should Inteleon faint first, I would automatically concede the battle. Now with that being said, even during these double battles, Inteleon had no problem sweeping the entire battle. Snipe Shot worked wonders on the majority of the Pokemon here, and the rest were cleaned up by Air Slash. My battle with Piers followed a similar trajectory. All it took was a single X special attack and I was able to sweep his entire team with either Snipe Shot or Air Slash. After 109 battles, we had obtained our 7th gym badge, meaning there was only one left before we could have a crack at the champion himself. Before we leave Spikesmooth though, I wanted to grab the choice specs which are hidden behind the stage. This item is extremely powerful as it boosts the holder's special attack by quite a significant margin. The downside however is that this item locks you into using one singular move, but for teams that I can sweep with just Snipe Shot, it is by far the strongest item available. From here we travel back to Hammerlock. All that's left to do is take on the final gym challenge, which annoyingly requires us to engage in more double battles. Now you'd think these fights are more challenging than single battles, especially considering it's essentially a 1v2, but they're actually easier in my opinion, mainly because it's a dragon type gym, and Icy Wind deals damage to both of my opponent's Pokemon. Not only that, but there's a chance that Lilycove can tank a big hit instead of Inteleon, giving me more wiggle room to play around with. After defeating his 3 apprentices, we get to face off against the main man himself, Raihan. Now despite this guy being the leader of the dragon type gym, he doesn't have very many, well, dragon types. Instead he's got rock and ground types, which are meant to help set up sandstorms and shit, but really, they're just punching bags for my Inteleon, who has super effective moves against all of them. Flygon gets especially railed by ice type moves, and even his Duraludon doesn't stand up to Inteleon's Snipe Shot. His Sandstorm strategy also didn't work, as I just Dynamaxed a bit earlier and used Max Garza to set up a Rain Dance for me. Honestly, he was probably one of the easiest gym leaders out of the whole bunch, but that's precisely why I picked Sobble at the very beginning. With our sights set on the title of Pokemon Champion, all that was left to do was to make our way up to Winden, where we'd be able to compete in the Champion Cup. To get there though, we have to make our way through the treacherous Route 10, which, I mean, it's not really treacherous to be honest, I just said that for dramatic effect. In fact, most of the trainers here have Pokemon that I absolutely decimate, whether that be Steelixes or Phalanx or even a Rhydon. None of them proved to be any trouble whatsoever. Upon arriving in Winden, there were a few things I had to do. I made sure to buy up some vitamins at the Pokemon here. I grabbed a mixture of calciums and zincs to raise my Inteleon special attack and special defense respectively. There are also a few goodies to be found around the streets here, like rare candies and PP ups, which I would always use on Snipe Shot. With all that said and done, I think it's about time we took on the Champion Cup. The first round sees us facing off against Marnie. After a quick X special attack and a Rain Dance, I was able to sweep her whole team with Snipe Shot, granting me a spot in the semi-finals against Hop. Hop has come a long way since the beginning of the game, and I honestly felt bad that I had to keep beating him down. This instance was no different though. His team composition just doesn't match well into Inteleon. Scratch that, his team composition just sucks in general. Unfortunately, we're not able to jump straight into the finals, and instead we've got to play hide and seek with a Macro Cosmo agent before arriving at Rose Tower. Here we have a few simple double battles with Hop before meeting up with Oleana at the top of her tower. Now trust me when I say that Oleana was far scarier than I thought she'd ever be. Her battle theme is a complete banger, but she's got a few significant threats to Inteleon. Frostlass, however, isn't one of them, which did let me set up by using a few battle items. But Serena, on the other hand, was a problem. See, no matter what, this Pokemon could always 2-hit my Inteleon. This was so concerning that I had to Dynamax early in the hopes that I could one-shot her Serena with Max Airstream. Now Air Slash by itself may have done the job, but the one thing about Air Slash is that it has an accuracy of 95, meaning there's always that slight chance it can miss, and that's a risk that I wasn't willing to take. Thankfully it seemed to work out as I was able to dumpster Serena as well as the rest of Oleana's team. After meeting up with the chairman and Leon, we set our sights back on the Champion Cup where we face Bede for the 4th time. This guy is still a complete joke, and after setting up Rain Dance I was able to sweep his entire team. Nessa was a similar story, but instead of relying on Snipe Shot I had to switch to Air Slashes, which seemed to do the job just fine. Next up was Bea, and while she gave me a hard time back during the original gym challenge, Air Slash made quick work of a team this time around, meaning there was only one challenger remaining. Raihan is far scarier this time around than during the gym challenge. His Pokemon, despite being weak to Inteleon's moveset, all have strong coverage moves to counter me. His Torkoal, for example, has access to Solar Beam, and this paired with his Drought ability means he no longer has to spend a turn charging it up. In order to counteract this, I had to immediately set up a Rain Dance myself, meaning I couldn't use any battle items for now. He then sends out Goodra, which is beefy enough to tank 3 Snipe Shots while it's raining. Oh, and did I mention it has Thunder, which can't miss while it's raining? Guess I didn't think things through hard enough. As a result, I had to Dynamax early again to confirm the kill on Goodra with Max Hailstorm. This then caused it to hail, which further hurt my Inteleon, but I couldn't afford to waste my Dynamax turns healing. so I slowly had my health chipped away until I was face to face with his Gigantamax Duraludon. Thankfully Duraludon's attacks did barely any damage, and I was able to take him out with 2 snipe shots while in the rain. This victory gives us the right to challenge Leon for the title, but in typical Pokemon fashion, there's always something we have to do first, and in this case, it's saving the world. To do this, we first have to travel back to the Slumbering Weald, where we pick up the rusted sword. We then travel back to Hammerlock, where we confront President Rose himself. This guy's team isn't exactly the easiest thing to match into with Inteleon, but by this point I had amassed a significant level advantage over his Pokemon. His Ferrothorn did pose a threat, so I made sure to Dynamax early and finish him off with Max Airstream. The rest of his team fell shortly after to numerous snipe shots. Now after decimating the chairman, we make our way up to the tower's summit, where we see Leon struggling to catch Eternus. Not to worry though, as we've got Icy Wind, which, wait, what's happening here?
I'm in danger!
So let me get this straight. My super effective attack tickles Eternus' sack, while he can 2-hit me at any time. I mean, I guess our only way is to continuously tank his hits until he runs out of Dynamax cannon attacks. Thankfully Eternus used Flamethrower this second time around, allowing me to sneak in an X special defense to help tank his cannon attacks. After a pretty prolonged fight, we finally managed to take him out, or at least take out his first phase. See, following its defeat, Eternus Eternamaxes itself and a raid battle begins. Thankfully we receive help from Hop, Zacian, and Zamazenta. Without them, this fight would have most likely been impossible, especially considering I do fuck all damage to Eternus and still get 2 hit by him. Unfortunately, I am forced to catch him at the end, but oh well, we'll just have to deposit him straight after. With Eternus caught in the darkest day behind us, all that remains is that championship battle against Leon. Before that though, I bought up a few more battle items and herbs. I also used every rare candy I had collected up till now to push Inteleon to level 68. With one Pokemon and a dream, we stepped out onto the field to face our final challenge. Now Leon has 2 major threats to our Inteleon, the obvious one being his Rillaboom, which he chose as a pure counter to our starter. The other one though is his Charizard. And you're probably thinking, wait, Charizard? Doesn't Inteleon wipe the floor with Charizard? And you'd be correct in thinking that. This Charizard is a bit scarier though, as he has access to Solar Beam. More importantly though, this means he also has access to Max Overgrowth after Dynamaxing. There's no way in hell my Inteleon can tank a Max Overgrowth from a Gigantamax Charizard, so my only hope is to one-hit him myself. Leon's team composition is one of the main reasons I first chose Inteleon. Even though he has these 2 threats, I'm able to cover for Rillaboom with Air Slash, and I could deal with Charizard through my powerful water moves. With that being said, there still was an awful lot of setup required for this fight. Thankfully, Leon starts the fight off with Aegislash, who doesn't pose any threat to Inteleon at all. With him out, I was able to use multiple X defense and X special defense battle items. This meant I could tank certain attacks like Thunderbolt from Dragapult. I also snuck in a X special attack to guarantee that I'd one-shot Leon's Charizard later on. His Rillaboom couldn't tank my Air Slash, and I even Dynamaxed a turn early in order to get a Max Garza off on his Rhyperior. This meant I'd have the buff from the rain on my Max Garza, which thankfully one-hit Leon's Charizard as well. After a monumental 137 trainer battles, we had managed to become the champion of the Galar region with only our Inteleon. Now, while I did skip a good few trainers on my way here, I believe you could do this challenge fighting far less, probably sub 100. There are a good few roadblocks, but with enough planning and strategy, who knows what the limit truly is. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please do drop a like and subscribe if you're crazy. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will be seeing you all in the next one.